conversation.
All right, real quick while this is going, besides Drew Hopkins, who probably knows already, who can tell me what game this is? Not quite.
Super Bowl.
Anyone remember? All right.
This is Joe Montana's overtime pass into the end zone.
This is the 1982 NFC Championship game, 49ers against Cowboys. You know what? About 80% of you probably weren't even born yet. Granted, I was alive, not old to remember though, but I was alive when this happened. So I want to talk to you about this game. NFC Championship game, 49ers, 4 minutes left in the game, 90 yards to go, down by 6 points. If they can score a touchdown, they're going to go to their very first Super Bowl. Track back 3 years earlier, January 1979, this guy, Bill Walsh, was hired to come in and take over what was the absolute worst team in the NFL. The least talented, poorly run organization in the entire league. So Bill comes in as a brand new coach and has more or less a mess on his hands. Now Bill was kind of a revolutionary figure in the NFL. He instituted an offense called the West Coast offense. Those who follow the NFL know, most teams still use this offense more than 30 years later. But bigger than that was his impact on how football organizations will run, how they scouted players, how they coached up and taught those players, and how they really administered and ran an organization. And we're going to talk just briefly about how some of those apply to Dino Saki, to being a manager and a mentor. So, taking over the team, Bill realized this was a team woefully short on talent. Now, in 1979, there was no free agency. They could not go out and acquire the best players, and they had no tradable assets. Thankfully, it's the worst team. They should have had the #1 draft pick, but the previous GM traded away the year before. So the draft was their only method to improve, and Bill knew that to find value in the draft, they were going to have to find individuals that were overlooked by other teams. Guys whose talent was probably not readily apparent or visible. Now, as Bill got with his coaches, he gave them some advice on what he wanted to see. So Adam Maher, a nice loud voice, can you read that for us?
I wanted to know what the redeeming quality is that this person has that will help us win. Don't just tell me what he can't do. Tell me what he can do. Will he be alert and ready when called upon? That quality alone might be of value and is worth treating as a skill in itself. Find every player's possible contribution and identify the reason to take him rather than just the reason not to.
All right, I want to start with those first 2 or 3 sentences. What's unique about that approach? What's different about that? Focus on the positive, right? Look for this player's possible contribution to this team. Don't worry about what they can't bring. Find where this organization, this player can fit. What does that mindset do for you? If you're someone that's evaluating talent, looking at players, what does that shift do in mindset?
It opens up a lot more players.
Opens up a lot more opportunities, right? A lot more players that you may have missed. Now, I love this second part here. Will he be alert and ready when called upon? Now, typically, when I'm looking at a player's coach, what am I trying to measure? 40 time, right? Bench press, high jump. What can this guy physically bring to the table? That lies completely outside of what you typically look at as a coach, right? Is that mental quality and that ability something that can be a contributing factor to help the team? So as Bill looked at talent, #1 was focus more on the strengths instead of just the weaknesses. And in the process of doing that, look beyond the measurable attributes to find what they can contribute. Sometimes those talents lay below the surface. Will this guy be able to come in and contribute in a high-pressure situation where we absolutely need to come through? So Bill goes out to find a quarterback. First stop was Clemson University, a guy by the name of Steve Fuller. Bill calls Steve. He's in town to scout him. He ends up talking to Steve's roommate, who's a wide receiver at Clemson. He says, hey, you want to come out and run routes for your roommate? Well, I kind of scout him out and see how he's doing. These were the stats of that wide receiver his last year in college. Those of you that follow football, what do you think? This guy seemed like high-quality prospects?
No.
Scrub, basically, right? Barely got in, only caught a few passes. So as Bill's working out this quarterback, not very impressed by the quarterback, but he saw something unique in this wide receiver. Adrian, nice loud voice. Can you read what Bill's thoughts were on this?
This player was not supposed to have good speed, but he had a loose stride that would be excellent in the open field and in the film. I eventually saw in him he ran away from defensive backs for a 50-yard touchdown. I was looking for a big wide receiver who could go against linebackers and catch the short, medium-range passes underneath coverage, and I thought he would be an excellent candidate.
All right, so what did Bill see in this guy that was a little bit unique? Saw some physical ability, right? The guy had, he was a little bit tall, 6'4", had a good stride, could run quickly, but also he found a need in his offense, in his organization, where this guy could fit, right? He wanted a big receiver that could go against these linebackers and kind of middle defenders. Now, in the scouting process, kept looking for a quarterback. One of his scouts kept raving about a specific quarterback. Now, this guy had been third string at his college for most of his time. Would come up with first string for a few games, then be back down to third string. Was never really a consistent player. These were his full college stats. So once again, those of you that know football, if I'm looking at this guy's cumulative stats, how's he look? Barely completed over half his passes. Same number of touchdowns, interceptions. Probably not the best candidate. Here's what Bill saw. Joe Hill, nice loud voice. If you can read that for us.
You can see his ability right away. It's so important that a quarterback be able to get back quickly and set up and then be able to improvise and play breaks down. I sensed just watching in that workout that he'd be able to do that. People said he didn't have a strong arm, but he moved the ball fine. He was quick, agile, and fluid in his movements.
Thank you, Joe. So what did Bill see in him in that workout?
Potential.
Ability to progress. Ability when, hey, everything breaks down, this guy was able to improvise and get something to happen. This is a guy that could possibly fit in and perform within what he needed. So along comes the draft. This guy, Dwight Clark, that wide receiver from Clemson, he ended up picking up in the 10th round of the draft. Now that quarterback, who didn't have a lot of arm strength, was not viewed as a serious candidate. It was a guy from Notre Dame named Joe Montana. So Bill Walsh found this overlooked talent in both players because he was able to identify something called their native genius. A lot of the managers here have read a book called Multipliers that talks a little bit about native genius. Let's talk about it. Native genius is important, right? Look at these two dudes. They look like Swedish place kickers or like Euro pop stars. Right? Something special had to be found in these guys. Jason Hainsworth, if you can read us for a nice loud voice there, native genius, what that is.
Something that people do, not only exceptionally well, but absolutely naturally. Finding someone's native genius is the key that unlocks discretionary effort. What people do easily, they do without conscious effort. They do it better than anything else they do, but they do not need to apply extraordinary effort to the task.
Thank you. So native genius is an innate skill an individual possesses, something that they do easily and simply without effort, something that they can bring to the table and help within an organization or a team. So within Dealer Socket, who has the primary responsibility of identifying native genius within the consultants?
Managers.
Managers, probably step one, right? Managers, that's part of their job, is to spend time with their guys and identify native genius. Who else has an opportunity to identify native genius in consultants? Leads, right? Cameron gave a great presentation yesterday and talked about servant leadership. Every single one of you guys that installs has an opportunity at least once a month, so your territory is not too big. You guys never get out there. But for the most part, every one of you has an opportunity at least once a month to be a leader, to be in a leadership position. And that means having the opportunity to observe and look for talent in others. So I want to talk a little bit about how to identify native genius. The book Multipliers talks about some key things to look at when you're spending time with individuals. What do they do better than anything else they do? What is this guy's biggest strength, biggest talent? What do they do better than the people around them? What do they do that helps them stand out and be different? What do they do without effort, and what do they do without being asked? So, similar to a football team, similar to my beloved 49ers, consultants all have some native genius. I want to talk about a few real briefly that I've observed either recently or in the past. Talk real briefly about Spencer Owens. Spencer is brand new to the San Diego territory. I had time to go out and observe his territory 2 weeks ago. And during the 45-day visit, Spencer's teaching his class and gets a pretty common question we all get. Errors that customers come into on contact dashboard. Now, product knowledge is a given. We all know how to walk them through this issue. We know how to say, here's what you do, you check the box, you move on. Spencer took the time to show them and sit with them, here's exactly what you're doing that causes it, here's what you do when it comes up, and here's how you get around it. Some guys just have a unique ability to teach and will spend and invest the time with the customer or with others around them to teach appropriately instead of just answering the question and moving on. Owen Allen. So I remember it's been about 3 years since Owen was hired, and the first time I met Owen, Owen's not the biggest guy. I remember thinking, man, hired a guy out of high school, looks like. Now, there's a lot I didn't know about Owen at the time. not long after that, we went on a big install, big Penske install back east. It was one of those multi-rooftops. I think Nate Divity and I are off running around trying to take care of the service PDC, because of course service dashboard we were having issues with back then. And I felt bad, but I'm like, Nolan, I need you to be here at this rooftop and work with these guys. And I kind of knew that they might be going alive. It's going to be a tough one. I remember Owen coming back that first day and being like, man, this lady was upset about this and pissed about this, and they were just, she was pretty stressed out about it. About 2 days later, I go back over, and everyone's doing a lot better. Everyone's kind of relaxed. One of the things I've learned about Owen is tenacious. He will fight tooth and nail if you are an upset customer to win you over and make you his biggest fan. And I've seen that time and time again from him. Even now, as in Arizona, I recently was visiting some of his old stores in Northern California. They still talk about how much they appreciate him. He has an innate ability to gain the customer's confidence and win them over. He's not going to give up until it happens. Brandon Moss. Now, a lot of you guys don't know Brandon Moss. He's now in product management. He was a new consultant about 3 years ago, also one of these Penske installs. And I asked Brandon to sit down and to take a bunch of templates and copy and move them over site to site. This store, this Penske store, wanted to copy what the Honda store was doing or vice versa. So I don't see Brandon for about an hour. Brandon comes back and says, okay, Ken, so those are done and updated, and by the way, I noticed the original ones, all their links were bad, so I went through, fixed every link, verified those on the new site and the old site. Didn't ask him to do that. Brandon had the innate ability to problem solve and troubleshoot and fix on the fly without being told to. That's why he's a product manager now. So if people aren't aware of Native Genius, they're not in a position to deliberately use it. So one of the important things we need to do as leaders is identify that Native Genius for them. By telling people what you see, you raise their awareness and confidence, allowing them to provide their capability more fully. So real quick questions for managers. You guys are out every quarter with your teams. You're on calls with them. Are you taking the time as a manager to identify their Native Genius for them? You're talking about what they bring to the table. Your install leads. Once again, you guys at least once a month are in a leadership position. Are you looking for Native Genius? And are you taking the time to communicate that to their managers? I'll be honest with you. Brandon's Native Genius, I didn't tell his manager about what I saw. I should have. I didn't give that feedback. We rely heavily on you guys as a management staff to be our eyes and ears and give us feedback. So as you see great things from the people out there, you need to help us know that. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Bill's approach to teaching and mentoring. And side note, I just love that picture. It's one of my favorite pictures. Greatest quarterback and greatest coach sitting there ground up plays in the dirt. It makes me smile every time I see it. So in the NFL in the late 70s, for lack of a better term, to be a good coach, you had to be a hard ass. You had to chew out your players. The thought was players would play right and perform well if there was fear of punishment or getting chewed out. Basically, if I got my guys on the field, they're going to play well because they don't want to hear from me if they screw up. Now, in Bill's mind, that was not an ideal performance state. That was not what was going to get the most out of his people. So here's Bill's approach to teaching and mentoring. So Adam Maher again, if you can read that for us.
The entire 49ers approach was based on self-respect and self-esteem. The point was to help a player be better and to reinforce him in the process. Performance enhancement was the theme of everything we did.
Fantastic. So the key thrust of being a coach and a teacher in another organization was performance enhancement, helping the individual improve and reinforce them in the process. One of the right tackles on the team, a guy named Keith Fonhorst, who played for Bill for almost a decade, said he never remembered getting yelled at by Bill or one of his assistant coaches. That wasn't the process. Thankfully, at Dealer Socket, we don't really have managers and directors that yell at you, I don't think. Maybe Chad does from time to time. For the most part, that's not a process. However, there's some key teaching models we can follow. Bill had what he termed his behavior change or behavior maintenance process. Now, I want you to think about how this applies to Dealer Socket. So when they had a new play to implement, or when they were in training camp and they were teaching their offensive linemen a specific skill, this was their process for teaching that skill or play. The first step was appropriate behavior is described. So I'm thinking about Dealer Socket for a second. If I'm sitting with a brand new guy in install and we need to build a bunch of campaigns, I'm going to spend time talking about we do X, Y, and Z when we build this campaign, right? Or when he's going to teach a class, we're going to review what he needs to do on that. All right. Second one, the behavior is then performed under the coach's watchful eye. Or we're going to take time to observe what they're doing. The behavior is critiqued by the coach in very specific terms. I think that's really key, right? Does it do us any good to say, no, you didn't do a good job, or hey, nice work, and that's it? very specific feedback.
Yeah, you're good.
All right. Thanks, Trey.
This is a great presentation. I reviewed it last week. It's awesome.
All right. All appropriate behavior is reinforced. If the skill was not performed correctly, the appropriate movements were described again by the coach. I think that's a big thing. When we give feedback, what do we always start with?
Positives.
The positive, right? We always start by, here's what you did well. Here's the things you did well before we get to the critiques we need to improve upon. The last step, the coaching staff consistently described appropriate behaviors and gave specific feedback. Does the performance appraisal process, does it happen once and never again? Should it, right? It should be ongoing. Even if you've been here like 4, 5, 6 years, you should be always be getting feedback from your manager and looking to give feedback to those around you. One key thing that Bill always said, never to say nice play, say what exactly was nice about it, and keep your mouth shut. Give good specific feedback. So in his process of teaching and coaching his team, Bill had a few guidelines. The first of those was the foundation of a standard of performance is attention to detail. So thinking about either side for a second, where does that attention to detail come into play?
Everywhere. Everywhere?
Everywhere, right? If I'm on an install and I'm sitting with someone who's brand new, I need to make sure they know every single thing we need to do to make that install successful. What goes into that successful class? What goes into getting the desk inside built right, the service side built right, whatever it might be. Second one is, we practice not just to be good, but to be perfect. And every week in practice, Bill had what he called his just-in-case drill. It's about 4 or 5 specific places the team always ran. Rarely used them in the games, and that kind of frustrated the team. They felt like every week we're doing these same goofy plays over and over again. They don't seem to work out quite right. And Bill had to do it week in and week out. I want you to think about that for a second. We practice not just to be good, but to be perfect. If I'm on an install with somebody and they teach a class and they don't do a good job with it, what should I be doing as the lead on that install? Coaching them, right? I should be telling them what they did well and where they need to improve. There is nothing wrong. We need to get out of the mindset of failing someone on a class or telling them they did not pass off the class. So Josh, I'm going to pick on Josh for a second because Nate's not here to talk to anymore. Josh, who did you fail one time back when he was new?
Nathan Usher.
Nathan Usher. What class did you not pass off?
Was employee dashboard. No,
Now,
yeah, employee dashboard.
did things work out for Nate? Was his dealer second career ruined because he failed one class?
No, I think he's a mess in the wreck.
It's a wreck, right? Did he hate Josh Redmond because of it? No. Dave, what class did you fail to pass off with me when you were new?
Internet.
Internet. Still remembers, right?
Yes.
I remember when I was new, one of the best mentors I had was Darren Harris. I did a lot of installs with Darren when he was a consultant. A lot of how I taught, how I explained things to the dealer, I modeled after what I saw from Darren. But I remember going to dinner at nights with Darren, and he would teach me things about inbound call tracking, outbound call tracking. Then he would quiz me on those to make sure I understood what he was talking about. I failed the admin class with Darren the first time because I didn't go through 4 or 5 very specific little buttons in one of the screens. So the second time I went back, I made sure I knew every single thing on there. A good mentor is going to hold you to perfection and to a higher standard. Now, one of the other aspects in having this team perform and kind of coalesce and work together was Bill's idea of unity. So Adrian, can you read that for us?
The critical factor whenever people work together is that they expect something of each other. It's not just that the coach expects a lot of the players, it's the fact that the players expect a lot of each other. We establish a standard of performance here where every man is an extension of his teammates. We prepare for every contingency, and through all this, there is a single thrust. Sacrifice for your team because you infinitely care. You are truly a 49er when you aid and assist each other, when you believe in each other.
So to build an effective team, to be an effective teammate, what was required by Bill?
Believe in each other.
Trust. Sacrifice for your team because you infinitely care. Now the term that Bill used, or really did use at the time, was love. Love was what put that team together. Bill loved his team, and he made sure that there was a loving bond between the guys that played for him. Now, kind of a goofy word, not a word we use much in football or in the business world, but that should be what governs our actions. Now, am I going to say, hey man, I love you little buddies, so it's okay that you screwed up that class. It's okay that you didn't put your notes in. Is that how I'm going to do it? If I truly love that individual, I want the best for them, what am I going to do? Am I going to push them to be better? Am I going to hold them to a high standard and expect a lot of them? Good parenting advice too when you think about it, right? Should be the same thing. So a great mentor is invested in the well-being and growth of those around him. So that means taking the extra time to teach, give feedback, and enforce a high standard. Almost all of you guys have benefited at some point from having a great mentor. That's how you got to where you are now, whether before you were soccer or after you were soccer. We need to make sure that we invest that same time in those around us, that we are a mentor for those so they can grow and progress. So just kind of put the pieces together to be a good leadership, be a good mentor. Look for that person's native genius. Find that talent that they can bring to the table. Shape behavior. Give them the skills they need to succeed. Set a high standard and build unity and sacrifice. Now getting back to that Dallas game. It's late in the game. 3rd and 6. They're a few yards away. Bill puts into play something called ground left slot sprint right option. Now you might not be able to see this too well, but the basic goal in this play, you got Dwight Clark on the outside, you got Freddie Solomon here as the inside receiver. Solomon's job is to run an out into the end zone with the hope that he's going to draw Dwight Clark's defender with him and clear up space for Dwight to go into the end zone. Now in this specific play, this late in the game, Freddie Solomon slips to the turf, and his defenders go with him. So Dwight's job is now to rotate around to the back of the end zone and hopefully get a pass from Joe Montana if the protection can hold in. So real quickly, we are going to
would mark the end of one dynasty and the birth of another. Dwight is in here sliding back out. This is great when they're tired and they're confused. They want to get back to Dallas. This is when you knock their ass off. If you don't get what you want, you just simply throw the ball away. You're not there to play. You're ready to go to the point, got it. There wasn't a doubt in our mind that we were going to score on Dallas. They knew that they couldn't stop us. You only had to look across the line of scrimmage to know that. We had Joe. Who is this guy, Montana? I'm John Wayne. I'm John Wayne. And John Wayne never loses. I'm making this throw. So fasten your seatbelts now. We got turbulence and plenty of it here in Candlestick Park.
Okay, one last thing to highlight here. That guy I was speaking with, the little white beard, that was Randy Cross. He was the center on that team. What did he say as they were driving down? What did he say about their mindset? There was not a doubt in our mind that we were going to score. We knew it, and the opponent knew it. Randy Cross had been there in 1978 when they were 2-14. They were the worst team in the league. A great coach is going to build confidence and belief in his people to the point where they believe in themselves. And now, there's no doubt that they can succeed. Nothing can stop them. So as you guys take the time to manage, mentor, help those around you, that helps Jewish Soccer get to its own Super Bowl. So please invest that time to help your teammates. Make them better, make yourselves better. Thanks.